I guess we've allowed enough time for the procrastinators. They won't be, I promise you, when we're done, there'll be at least twice as many people. Okay, we really don't have any announcements except to say if you have any feedback to give us about the weekend, you can go to the Ex-Mormon Foundation website and there's information on how to write an email to the board. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the weekend that you want to share? Or,
It was lovely.
no, thank you. It was lovely to have you here.
Thank you for all your work.
You're welcome.
For an ever Mormon visiting for the first time and attending, all you people are just awesome. You really are. You're great people, you know. I've been in lots of groups with lots of different kinds of people, and you're awesome.
When will the talks be available online?
If you go to the website, you can get the audio. You go to YouTube for the pictures, but it usually takes weeks. Oh, well, it takes weeks. Oh, I was, okay, at least a month probably. What they have to do is some of the talks, if there was PowerPoint, they have to get that, you know, and he has to splice that in so people who see it can see it like we did. So it takes a while, and it's all voluntary, so, you know, that goes.
Sue?
I thought we might have, go ahead.
My wife has, do I need this reading? My voice is so loud.
No, you're fine.
For recording.
And some of us are being, so you need
Okay. Well, we go to the Sunstone Symposium every year, and one of the most popular sessions is Why I Stay. And my wife suggested you ought to have something like that, but Why I Leave.
Well, we do, there's of course not enough time for everybody to do it, but we're always stretched for time, but something like that, it would be a good noontime thing, I think, you know, for those who want to participate. And we're always open to anybody who has an idea about a smaller session, like a breakout session. As you've noticed, we don't have any sessions competing with each other, and that's because this is a relatively small conference. And with the work that goes into presentations, we really like to provide a full audience to our speakers. So with, there's 2 roving mics. I'll stand over here and Tim's over there. And you can ask anybody any question. And we're just going to be kind of open-ended. When people are really done, we'll be done.
Hello, my name's Judith Homer and I'm with British Ex-Mormons with Swedish roots. My question is for Hanson Brigitte, and I don't know if this is too personal or not, but it's one that I've heard a lot of people inquiring about. Did you get your second anointing?
If I did, I couldn't tell you. And if I didn't, I wouldn't know. But I can say like this, that there's a lot of people wondering about the second anointing and what kind of promises. Some people think you can do anything and everything will be okay. But I just wanted to tell you that if you read Mr. Phillips' contact, there is no wrong in that. Then you can use your own mind and figure out if I have or not. Yes, it is an answer. Because I believe you also have a brain.
It's called a squishy answer.
Yes, it is. Because this is being recorded.
My name's Heidi. I'm on the board from Oregon, and my question's for David. When I was a kid, I was taught that the Jews in the Holocaust deserved what they got because they killed Jesus. That was the punishment for, and I was wondering if that is and I've mentioned that to lots of people, and they were taught the same thing. Is that a teaching that was, in doctrine in a manual? Is that something that's just widely believed but was never actually a teaching, a doctrine? But that was what I was taught growing up.
Well, I guess there are, okay. There's a Mormon scholar by the name of Armin Moss. He may not be particularly popular with this group because he tends to be still trying to be a believer. But he is a genuine scholar, and he's done some research on Mormon attitudes toward the Jews. And he found that there were, as he describes it, there are two types of basic anti-Semitism. There's number one, which you mentioned, a Christ killer anti-Semitism. And you find a lot of that along with a lot of religions that venerate the suffering of Jesus on the cross. The Catholics have a lot of Christ killer anti-Semitism. And then there is a second type, which is the failure to convert type anti-Semitism. Dr. Moss, in his analysis, rejects the belief that the Mormons, now this is his opinion, you may disagree, and it would be fine if you don't, but he rejects the assertion that the Mormons had the Christ killer anti-Semitism because Mormon theology is such that Christ's sacrifice was necessary. In fact, it was in the Mormon version of it, it was Heavenly Father's plan. Okay, but he does say that there is genuine Mormon anti-Semitism along the second line, and that is you failed to convert, so therefore you are evil type. And the Mormons did not. They had a few in my research. I encountered. Specifically the names of about 10 named people who were Jews who had converted to Mormonism either in their generation or their parents or grandparents had converted, and so that they had passed it on. The Mormons did not target Jews for conversion, obviously not in Germany deliberately, because they knew to keep their distance from the Jews. But also they just didn't do it anyway. So I don't know if I answered your question there, but Fawn Brody talks about, in her notes, was the author of No Man Knows My History, but also the daughter of Thomas McKay, who was a three-time Mormon missionary of Germany, 2 times as a mission president. She talks about the country bumpkin latent anti-Semitism that she experienced growing up in Utah. But it was mostly the failure, to put it in Dr. Moss's paradigm, it was the failure to convert type of anti-Semitism.
Next.
My name is Herb Berkowitz. I'm a Nevermo. My wife is the Exmo in the family. Heidi has called me Jewish-ish, which I guess is accurate. This question is mostly for Hans and Brigitte, but really for the whole panel. Before the last general conference, there was some expectation of hope that the 3 vacancies on, and if I'm wrong on the lingo, it's because I'm a Nevermo, the three vacancies among the 12 would be filled with some notion of diversity from overseas or something like that. And as it turns out, of course, it was true blue Utah Mormons. And that kind of confirmed something that I've been thinking, and that is on the subject of, what is the church's hierarchy most worried about? And I think they're most worried about a threat to their legitimacy as the true leaders of the Mormon church. Because, I don't think they're that worried about the Book of Abraham or the historicity or the polygamy or any of that. They're worried about some other church, like the Community of Christ, that offers basically the same theological benefits, the same celestial kingdom, but without the anti-gay bias, without the politics that are put in, just in a much more, and obviously more women-friendly, and that it would be a lot easier for people who want to leave and hold on to that much of their belief system than to leave because they become entirely disenchanted with the church, and that could lead to wholesale desertions. And I just wonder what your reaction is to that analysis. In other words, the thing that they're most worried about is threats to their legitimacy.
Let's let everybody answer that if you have an answer. I think we were all equally disappointed, if you even care.
I'll attempt an answer, or unless you're ready to go.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to speak to this briefly from my own experience, and I would imagine you have probably a very different experience. I spent 2 years in activism for LGBT rights within the LDS Church and watched numerous people go through various kinds of difficult situations with their leaders. And one thing that I think stood out to me is that there's a very strong cultural component to becoming a high leader. It's very important that they understand certain kinds of things, because there's a lot of double binds that people are put in. You have to understand the cultural language that's being spoken by leaders. And I watched some bishops who didn't get it bumble certain things, because when instructions come down to bishops about how to discipline, it's rarely couched in very clear terms. So for instance, Brigham Young probably didn't tell Porter Rockwell, go kill that person. He probably said, take care of that problem. And Porter Rockwell understood how to interpret what he was to do from that. And it also absolves a leader of a certain amount of guilt over how that got carried out. So I think it serves a very important psychological function for people in charge to be able to disown some of the more aggressive aspects that might happen in terms of how their leadership is being carried out. So I think that's one component of why people come from deep inside the culture. And the second piece is it's very important. I'm going to pull back to the control factors. It's really useful to have a person who has extended family in the church, because that adds weight to the different types of control that are based on this threat of social exclusion. And for them to have family that would have risks if they were to speak out against. It's just, I think coming from inside the culture is a tremendous benefit. And I don't think it's thought through that clearly. Those are just some of my thoughts. I could be entirely wrong about any of it. So there's
I don't know if anybody knows how they select new 15 people in the top. I guess that's the reason they call it revelation from. But I do know in the corporation there is statements always talking about, we always know who will be the next prophet, because it's always the senior. apostle, and this is written in the corporation's codes. So don't be worried. It's nothing to do with the church. It's more a corporation that will be selected. Those two new apostles, three of them, I knew two of them, Raspen and Renlund, or in Swedish Renlund. And they are very good people, very loyal to their leaders. And you can always wonder, why is it that the church, well, if you look at it, the church leadership on those positions always are related to big families, or they are connected to their wife was some pioneer leader, or so they're much. Quinn talks about that in his books about extension of power. But for my sake, I would love to see someone else. And I thought they tried and made Dieter Uchtdorf as one of the 12, taking him from Europe. And I don't think he is connected with the famous families of Utah yet. Maybe his children will be, I don't know. So in one way there was a very large or big hope that he would be different. But I think it's, kind of mold down to a shape, even if you have your own opinions. So you're always under the first and the oldest one. And I don't understand the hierarchy that the one who has been the longest shall be more important than the one who comes number 15. Because if you're called by God and you're called to be there, and I guess to be there you should be yourself and tell what you believe in.
Fat chances.
Maybe it has to do that the first presidency, as I see it now, is kind of very weak. I think the power of the church is more on the legal level and public relation and I don't know if there is any real strong power making the church go the way they like. I don't know if they even know what they're going. But Brother Packer, he had those 3 threats, and I think that's the only revelation I think's been true for a long time. So I think you is right, intellectual and female and homosexual. It's a threat. And, I think they're working on that. But they come also very, if I would say, on the right wing of the Mormons, living back where polygamy and revelation was important, and the gift of tongues and things like that. And there are a few around in Utah, I think, that support that. I think they feel threats from all sides, from above, nothing happened, and from the sides where we are and other people. So, but I really like to see it different. It should be good if someone from other countries backgrounds come into the 12 or 15. So I don't know if I answer it, but I don't really know. I know there's a lot of computer working with it and a lot of people, because they need a lot of leaders all the time, every time. Every second year it should change. mission presidents all over the world and temple presidents. I guess they select all the time and find out if they are, of course, too big is 70, and I guess now they have problems that I'm sitting here. Maybe they have a new program for the computers to be more stable.
Earl, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
I'm done.
Earl, do you have anything to add? Hold Mike over to you.
I'm not sure I have anything. I can't get inside the head, of course, of the 15, so I don't know what their thinking is. They could very well be concerned with their own tenure. But I can guess that they think the church is doing pretty well, and there's no need yet to change. I think the push for representation of other areas or sexes or countries or whatever is probably coming from the more liberal wing of the Mormons. And I think that there are probably a good number who would be upset if if a black or something like that would be appointed. And I think they know the people around here better than they know anyone else. And they probably think that they're rightfully due for such an appointment. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating.
Lyndon, you're next.
Oh, yes, I have some random speculation.
No,
if that's the name of the game. This isn't a direct answer to the question, but I do think that there's a big disconnect between church leadership and what maybe we would call fringy or liberal Mormons. And fringy and liberal Mormons, in my experience as a former fringy liberal Mormon, is that they think they have more say than they do, and they think they're more powerful than they are. And that sounds really negative. But so they're saying, okay, we want people of different representations, we want more equality for women, for LGBT people, and they create echo chambers where they hear other people saying that too, and so then they think, oh, we're going to get these at this conference. And there's a huge disconnect between that echo chamber that's in a lot of ways online for younger people, and then what the church hierarchy actually thinks. And to be even more negative, I don't think the church hierarchy really cares that a bunch of fringy Mormons wanted some people of color. So I don't think they even see those people as a threat. They're not real Mormons anyway, so why would the church change their policies to make people who aren't loyal necessarily and who aren't invested in the church in the same way, why would they do anything that makes them feel particularly happy? And that's sort of been my experience in my unlimited way, is that they don't see them as a threat, like your question kind of asked. They see them as a nuisance, and you don't cater to a nuisance. That's the end of my speculation.
Okay, I'm Lyndon Lamborn. I think most everybody here knows me. I excommunicated the church back in 2007. My question is primarily for Peter. I come from a very large Mormon family, and it's been interesting to watch over the years and decades the incidence of mental illness that has occurred in my family, extended family. And I've been curious for years now if there's any information or data that would be statistically significant to compare the incidence of mental illness in highly religious families versus, a secular type of, and I'm open to anybody that wants to comment also. If there's any significant data that you've seen or heard about that would draw a correlation between oppressive religious indoctrination and the incidence of mental illness. Yeah. Any comment would be appreciated.
Well, I'm going to give this a go and evade some of your question and answer some of the other parts. Mostly, I'm not aware of any specific studies currently, but it's a great question. I'll keep an eye out, and obviously if anyone knows of something, please come tell me. To answer it possibly slightly differently, a controlling situation such as a controlling religion where there's performance-based salvation issues or threats for nonconformance, that tends to have a big impact on certain types of illness that may not be as severe. For instance, if you have an anxiety disorder and you grow up in a fairly rigid Mormon family, that actually can make the anxiety much worse.